One of the problems with the internet is quite a lot. Some of those problems being people who blog about certain topics, which unfortunately, there really isn't a lot to talk about. This results in content creators having to get creative, and I mean make bad content for clicks. The thing with the Otherkin community in general is that there really isn't a lot to talk about. Outside of maybe the concept of it, drama that goes on specifically between us and other friend groups and internet trolls, you reach a point where there really isn't much to talk about outside of a few really niche things. For these reasons, I'm not currently planning on making any more videos like this, simply because there isn't really much to talk about. I may consider revisiting this at some point simply because I may come up with an idea that is good and I may want to pull through with. But as of right now, I don't really want to make bad content just to keep up with simple internet trends. Not to mention, I absolutely do love it when a content creator does make videos touching up upon how they are an otherkin, only for it to be one video because of the reasons I just previously mentioned. Otherkin is an umbrella term for someone who identifies as a non-human being in a human body. It sounds simple, but yet dumb, and extremely dumb for valid reasons for those who just have no idea what it is. Ultimately, though, people can identify as whatever they want, as long as they don't invalidate what other people feel for themselves. There are two main ways a otherkin can identify with what they identify with, and that is through either psychologically or just simply spiritually. I've never really seen it go any other way, but I have actually seen it go both spiritually and psychologically. Those who identify with it spiritually, I really cannot comment too much on because this is not really something I know much about. People who identify with this tend to claim they identify this through past lives or another universe or a dimension of some kind. The only one I know much about, though, is psychologically, because that is the one that resonates best with myself, and the other one is not something I can really wrap my brain around. The last one is psychologically, and is simply that you feel you're something non-human trapped in a human body, and you tend to experience things like psychological shifts and experiences that only you can experience. This type of otherkin can experience things like dysphoria and such other negative consequences, which I'm pretty sure the spiritual ones don't have, since I don't think that would imply, which is surprisingly common with those who identify as being an otherkin psychologically. I cannot recommend, though, looking into if you are a otherkin or not for these reasons specifically, especially where it is a potentially self-fulfilling prophecy. There are also two main ways you can resonate with your identity, and that is seeing your identity as yourself or an extension of yourself. And I think this only applies to those who identify with this psychologically. If you see your identity as yourself, this makes sense and makes things simpler and less confusing because you don't have to deal with the added steps of visualizing your identity and confusing yourself. If you see your identity as an extension of who you are, then you can scan or visualize by simply communicating with this identity of yours, and this is technically a valid way to connect with said identity. Connecting with said identity can be an easy way to get to know yourself better, or it can be a really simple way to just confuse the crap out of yourself even more than you already are. So I typically, though, don't recommend you go down this route if you are Etherean or otherkin, simply because it just has the potential to confuse the heck out of yourself. But anyways, so being an otherkin is something I do genuinely believe most people are technically. in some shape or form. There was this subreddit at one point called R Otherkin Cringe that existed a long time ago. The people who moderated it claimed that they were actually eventually identifying with being an Otherkin, resulting in the shutdown of the subreddit because they couldn't find anybody to moderate it. As a fair warning, I did hear about this and did follow on occasions the subreddit, but I did not see this happen firsthand. I just heard the aftermath from other people secondhand. I'm just mentioning this because, in case I'm wrong about this, because I could not find any information about this other than what I had heard at the time. But with that said, this does make a lot of sense in the context of the Otherkin community, since there are people who claim to have multiple identities while being an Otherkin in the Otherkin community, and one of these identities is almost always way more prominent than the other. Like, if you identified as a dragon or a wolf, that identity would dominate an identity such as an insect or a spider. The popular theory is that the more intelligent your specific identity has, the more prominent it is within you. And the more intelligent, the more it is you identify with it. The way I found out I was an Otherkin is because a while ago I experienced something when I was maybe 15 or 16 that felt like I had a tail on my tailbone and it wouldn't go away no matter how hard I tried. I could feel pressure and itchiness on my tailbone as if something was there but yet nothing was there. Not to mention nobody or even myself could see it. I could sometimes feel like it was brushing against my legs, for it was bushy despite nothing actually being there. This is something known as a phantom shift, which is something that is common within the Therian community especially. Therian is a Otherkin who identifies as a type of animal. That is when I found a community of people on the internet who helped me eventually figure out I was actually a fox Therian. They handed me a meditation, and it was a guided meditation, by the way, and I used this to help figure out I was a fox. Later, I would figure out more details through use of lucid dreaming, which helped me figure out more information about my fox stereotype, such as I'm actually a cross fox, I think. Don't quote me, since I've never been able to visualize it fully, but it is what it is. The community I joined that helped me figure out I was a Therian is this website called Community, which is the place I got to know the person who was famous back in the early 2000s, for they were part of a meme where basically people recorded a fake documentary and it literally resulted in them blowing up on the internet. This resulted in them embracing the meme, and not just embracing the meme, but trying to milk as much money for it, resulting in more hate towards Otherkin and even more hate towards themselves, for they were milking this for as much profit as they could and were profiting off of it, like creating a TV show on MTV at one point. There are instances where I will say I feel like it is valid to look into this, because this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and because it is a self-fulfilling prophecy and the fact that it can cause dysphoria, I don't recommend it generally to people. If you feel like you are already in the know of being an Otherkin, just want to explore your own identity a bit more, then I would personally recommend it. After all, it has already begun within you, and there's really nothing you can do to avoid it. If you are experiencing a shift of any kind and want to understand it, then by all means go ahead. There's some relief in simply knowing, but I wouldn't recommend deep diving into it anymore, because when you find out what your identity is, what it looks like, stuff like that, it's just pointless and has the potential for you to uncover more identities. But yeah, there's something in the Otherkin community known as shifting, and this is extremely common for people who do identify with their identity psychologically. I don't believe this is possible with the people who identify with this spiritually, because that would contradict itself, or shifting is mostly a strictly psychological thing. The most common shift is mental shifting, and this basically gives one the ability to channel their identity's mindset and allow them to roleplay as that identity. The easiest way to describe mental shifting and what it does to you is that it automatically puts you in the mindset of that said identity, and typically this does feel euphoric, imaginative, and playful when you are in this mindset. This mindset is also something that can lead to literally any other type of shift. The shift can trigger other types of shifts without much warning or consent, and mental shifting is best described as also being a gateway shift for this reason. Lastly, this type of shift is irreversible. If you mental shift once, you cannot be able to unsee what was just experienced. This results in you not being able to completely control being in this mindset, since you can slip back into it without much warning of any kind. If you were a Foxtherian like myself, despite the fact I never really experienced a mental shift in my life, if you see something run across you, you may desire to chase it. Or if you were a Dragonkin and you see a bat or bird flying, you may desire to start flapping your arms. If you do not manage your mental shifts, it will manage you. So a fair warning with this. One of the other most common types of shifts is something known as a phantom shift. Phantom shifting is when you feel like you have something attached to your body that isn't there, like pointed teeth, tails, fur, ears, scales, and etc. It's similar to like being an amputee where you cut off your arm and you still feel like your arm is there even though nothing's there. Except phantom shifting is nowhere near as severe as phantom limbs. Phantom limbs are extremely traumatic. This is also something that you can achieve yourself in your free time if you are not a Therian. This is best done with just imagination, just imagining something's on your body that really isn't there. This is something that can also just happen by accident. Like in my case, when I just randomly discovered when I was 15 or 16, I had a phantom tail. But typically though, if it's caused by an accident, usually that implies something caused it, and that something is usually being an Otherkin, even though maybe not necessarily, I don't know. But another type of shift, by the way, and this one is not that common, and that is a sensory shift. It basically feels like you can physically sense something that you wouldn't be able to sense otherwise, like intense smell, intense sight, increased hearing, and this is not that common, and I've only been able to achieve it a very few number of times myself actually. This is mostly only able to be achieved typically by mental shifting, since it is not that common type of shift, and it's a rather difficult one to try to experience yourself. But I've only done this accidentally a few times, and it was okay, I guess. Lucid dream shifting is another type of shift that is super uncommon for reasons you aren't really going to expect. Lucid dreaming is awareness of yourself dreaming while you are dreaming. There are ways you can achieve shifts and lucid dreams easily, but the hard part isn't actually lucid dreaming. It's actually shifting into your own identity for some really strange reason in a lucid dream. I've only done this a few times, and for some reason, it is extremely difficult to pull this off for zero reason at all. And even if you do achieve this, there's a really strong chance you will wake up instantly, since the amount of processing power to pull this off in your own head oftentimes wakes you up. And if that doesn't wake you up, there are things that can happen that totally will. Like, I think the easiest way I've ever done this was by going into a lucid dream, which is something you can very easily do, and just saying out loud, I wish I could experience myself on a non-physical level, and you will experience it in the dream. But the big issue is, like, there have been times I've done this. I've been straight up murdered in my sleep by my own characters in my dreams. Like, I would be straight up murdered, but it has happened, and it's happened quite a few times. There are ways you can influence your dreams before you go to sleep so that you dream that you are shifted in a non-lucid way, and this is something known as dream shifting. I've only done this by accident a few times, and to be honest, I did this by an accident, but the easiest way to describe what it was like was I just had a dream that I was a fox, like I am, and it really wasn't that interesting to pull off. Like, maybe it's more interesting if you try to do it on purpose, but I never really thought it was that interesting. A cameo shift is when a person shifts into something you can trigger yourself, and that isn't your identity. This happens typically to artists and children with good imaginations. In order to pull any of this off, you do need to be super imaginative. Like, you really need to be very imaginative, otherwise this is really difficult to pull off. Typically, people who are otherkin, who shift, do like to wear stuff that reminds them of their identity, whether this be a tail, ears, or a pin with their identity on it. Feeling connected with your identity is very important to you because you physically are not that identity, and it does feel extremely positive to identify with this when you can. Like, for example, there are people who are Therians who go to furry conventions. Regardless of how you identify yourself in life, it is important to respect other people and what they identify with, because why should other people respect you and the person you are if you cannot respect other people and what they are? Whether people like this or not, the otherkin community is actually very vulnerable, and a huge part of this is actually like hate on the internet. Yes, there is a lot of hate generated around trans people or really anybody from the LGBT community, but with that said, tides can turn any moment, and the thing is, they probably will. For essentially, we are already being targeted constantly on the internet, unfortunately. Imagine going out in public, telling your friends you identify as something that isn't physically possible in the physical world. If they are good people and good friends of yours, they will try to understand. But for the amount of people who don't understand and don't care to try, it hurts. And the thing is, all it takes is one person to completely invalidate you to honestly make your day suck. Like, I honestly hate to say this. I made this video for a few reasons. One of those reasons is I really like content creators who do this once and don't really do it again. Since there isn't much to talk about, despite the fact there are lots of Therian YouTubers who are constantly making content. I'm not saying all of it is bad stuff, but it really does run dry really quickly. There's this YouTuber called Otherkin who did a video once on their channel that I actually really enjoyed because it talked about this once and never touched it again, and you can understand why. I don't really pay attention to any Therian YouTuber content creator or content creator of any kind simply because it runs dry extremely quickly. There really isn't much to talk about. Another reason I did this is because of niche people deserve kindness, because unfortunately there's hate for anything that's a minority, unfortunately. Lastly, I believe people deserve to know this, for this is something people don't really know much about, and this is something I can yap about for hours regarding myself if I wanted to, regardless of you liking it or not. I hope you enjoy this video. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section, for I'm very curious how this did impact people.